What's good, y'all? My name is Zach Young, and welcome back to Young Money Sports. And welcome to another episode of that show that everyone around the country loves, Was He Any Good? There were a decent amount of people to recommend this guy. Shoutouts to XCon86 Hot, Patrick Butler, Justin Shakur, Mike Murray, Luke Woodhull, and Mike Kahn for the recommendation. Also, I know I normally do this at the end of the video, but if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000, and I definitely think we can hit that sooner rather than later. But anyway, let's get into today's video. Allen Iverson, an icon of 2000's NBA, one of the best shooting guards of all time, as well as one of the greatest dribblers. This guy was able to change the game both on and off the court. He not only inspired future front offices to build around smaller guards, but the way that he presented himself changed the way that current athletes show themselves off today. I mean, before he got to the league, you never really saw a star player have dreads or be covered in tats or show up to games in street clothes. Before that, NBA players used to show up to games, just in suits like they were going to church. But in today's NBA, fashion is more so used to express yourself, and we've even got to the point where some NBA players have their own fashion lines. After 2 stellar seasons at Georgetown, Iverson was taken #1 overall in 1996. Philly was hoping that he would be the answer to their problems. You see what I did there? AI would waste no time showing the league what he was made of, being named the NBA Rookie of the Year in 1997, and he would only continue to get better as the years went on. The answer's time in the city of brotherly love peaked in 2001. Iverson reached career highs in multiple stats and won his second NBA scoring title. He would be named to his second All-Star team, and most importantly, he won the 2001 NBA Most Valuable Player award. The success didn't stop once the regular season had concluded. Philadelphia, in an effort to build around their young superstar, had slowly built a team that could support AI in one way or another, primarily with their defense. The Sixers would survive tough battles against the Raptors and Bucks to make their first NBA Finals since 1983. This is also their last Finals appearance as of 2024. They would shockingly win Game 1 against the defending champion Lakers in overtime, a game that is well known for Iverson's clutch 48-point performance, as well as him crossing up and stepping over Tyronn Lue. The Lakers would give them a backdoor sweep, winning the next 4 games and their second straight NBA title. Iverson's scoring numbers looked good, but they came on inefficient shooting splits, and at this time there really wasn't anyone that could stop the duo of Kobe and Shaq. This would prove to be the only time that Iverson could realistically compete for a championship in Philadelphia. After 2001, Philly would only make it to the second round one time during Iverson's remaining tenure. This would probably be what most people remember about Iverson and the Sixers after that 2001 Finals run.
And we're in here talking about practice. We're talking about practice, not a game, not the game that I go out there and die for and play every game like it's my last. Not the game. We're talking about practice, man.
To give a little more context as to why AI was just so mad about this practice question, I believe around this time there was a trial going on for the murder of his best friend who had been shot just mere months earlier. So you can understand a little bit more now why something as meager as practice would set him off so much when something this bad was going on in his life. Through his remaining years in Philly, the answer would still put up good numbers and receive multiple individual accolades, but when it came to postseason success, there was almost nothing to show. It didn't help that the roster construction still wasn't that great. Like, yeah, the team's defense in 2001 was great, but the issue of only having one shot creator on the team reared its ugly head on the biggest stage, and the front office never really addressed that issue. There were no good marginal additions, only really bad contracts handed out by awful general manager Billy King. Iverson did play 2 seasons with Andre Iguodala, but this is before he could really break out, and the team traded for Chris Webber, who had slowly seen his star fade due to injuries. After a 5-18 start in 2006, it was obvious that the Sixers were far from being championship contenders. Iverson told King that if they weren't planning on making any moves to compete, then they needed to get rid of him. And they did. In December of 2006, Iverson was part of a blockbuster trade that saw him get sent to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for Andre Miller, Joe Smith, and 2 first-round picks in 2007. Just a little side note here, as an NBA fan in 2024, just going back and seeing these superstar trades made 15-20 years ago, it's really weird seeing more players get thrown in and not a whole college class worth of draft picks like we see today. Or maybe that's just Minnesota ruining all future NBA trades, who knows. Iverson spent 2 seasons in the Mile High City, and nothing really came out of it. He wasn't bad, but the pairing of he and Carmelo Anthony definitely didn't live up to the hype. Looking back at it, I don't understand how anyone thought this was going to work. Your franchise player is a guy who always needs the ball in his hands, and you want to pair him up with a guy who just spent the last decade always needing the ball in his hands. The team was still good, but nowhere near the championship contenders that the fans and front office hoped they would be. They won one playoff game in 2 seasons, and it also didn't help that the 2000s were a time where the Western Conference was just insanely stacked. Teams like the Lakers, Suns, Spurs, and Mavericks were consistently competing for championships around this time. To show just how crazy the West was at this time, look no further than 2008. This was Iverson's only full season in Denver, and the Nuggets finished the season with 50 wins. This was good enough to finish 8th in the conference, getting swept by the eventual conference champion Lakers. At this point, I think it was clear that the Iverson experiment wasn't really working in Denver. After only 3 games in the 2008-09 season, Iverson was dealt to the Detroit Pistons in exchange for former Finals MVP Chauncey Billups and Antonio McDyess. This was Detroit's way of shaking things up after losing in the conference finals 3 years in a row. Pistons president of basketball operations Joe Dumars stated that there were no sacred cows in the organization because of the team's inability to reach the finals in recent years. Strangely enough, this wasn't the first time that Iverson was linked to Detroit. In 2000, the Sixers were apparently really close to trading Iverson to Detroit after continued disputes with head coach Larry Brown. The only thing that stopped that was center Matt Geiger, who refused to waive his trade kicker because he didn't like the situation in Detroit. The answer made his Pistons debut on November 7th of 2008, scoring 24 points in a 103-96 loss to the New Jersey Nets. Then the next game he'd only score 10 on bad splits. This would set the tone for Iverson's play in the Motor City. For every game that he would drop 25 to 30, he would just score 5 to 10 the next night. And even in games where he would score at a high volume, there was a chance that it wasn't scored at an efficient rate and probably resulted in a loss. He would make his 10th straight All-Star game, although I believe that was more so because of his popularity rather than his play on the court. The season would trundle on, and it continued to be a struggle for both Iverson and the team. AI could never consistently find his footing, and the Pistons were just as streaky. At one point in the year, they were 10 games above 500, but that was as good as they would ever get. When I said they were streaky, I meant it. They would win 2, then lose 8, then win 4, then lose 2 more. It really showed that losing Chauncey hurt the team a lot more than I think they originally believed when they traded him to Denver. It also didn't help that Denver was finally starting to look like serious contenders, with Billups facilitating the offense rather than Iverson. The true downfall of AI in Detroit occurred in late February of 2009. The Pistons were playing the Hornets, and the answer would leave the game early because he aggravated a back injury that he suffered earlier in the year. At first it was believed that Iverson wouldn't miss that many games, but the injury showed to be more serious as time went on. Iverson would miss the next 16 games, and his return would come in a way that he was not really used to. AI would make his return in March of 2009, scoring 8 points in 21 minutes in a 4-point win against his former team. However, Iverson would be in a unique position that he was not exactly the biggest fan of. Iverson would come off the bench, which is something that he had publicly pushed back against before.
I don't know any franchise players that come off the bench. I don't know any Olympian that come off the bench. I don't know any All-Star come off the bench. I don't know any former MVP that come off the bench. I don't know any 3-time scoring champion come off the bench. I don't know any first team or NBA come off the bench. Why Allen Iverson?
This would continue for the next 2 games, which were both losses, and Iverson made his opinion known on the idea of playing in a reserve role. It messed with him both mentally and physically. He didn't like the idea of sitting, going in, and then sitting again. And on one hand, I can understand that. Like, he was used to being the guy for over a decade by this point, and I feel like it would be pretty hard to give that up and change your game this late into your career. But at the same time, what he was doing wasn't working anymore. His heavy usage, ISO-heavy style was the complete opposite of what Detroit had been running for the last 6 years. And in his introductory press conference, he said that he would do whatever it took to win a championship. He would do whatever the coach said and carry it out to the best of his abilities. But when the time came to do something that he didn't like, he was singing a completely different tune.
I'm do whatever the coach wants me to do out there on the basketball court. He give me an assignment, I'll just try to carry it out to the fullest.
Even practice?
Practice.
Iverson would be shut down in April of 2009, missing the remaining 7 regular season games and the impending sweep to LeBron and the Cavs. The team stated that it was because of back injuries, although it wouldn't surprise me if coming off the bench had some role to play in his exit. He finished the year averaging a career-low 17.4 points per game and wasn't brought back following the 2009 season. Instead, the answer would sign with the Memphis Grizzlies in September of 2009. He hoped to bounce back and prove his critics wrong, who believed that he had lost a step or two. Unfortunately, this stint would do nothing for either side. AI only played in 3 games, all coming off the bench, before being waived. He would get a slightly better send-off, going back to the 76ers, even if the team and Iverson had seen better days. Not much really came from this return, with family issues sidelining the former MVP for the remainder of the year. After a short stint in Turkey, Iverson would officially retire from basketball on October 30th of 2013. But now, to answer the question, Allen Iverson in Detroit, was he any good? Sadly, this is going to have to be another no. His play wasn't god-awful or anything, but he didn't fit Detroit's system at all. He still wanted to be the guy and get all the touches when the Pistons had thrived on a team-focused game for so long. And like I said, Chauncey Billups would thrive in Denver, helping them reach the conference finals for the first and only time in the Carmelo Anthony era. Ultimately, his refusal to come off the bench was what did him in not only in Detroit, but for the rest of his NBA career. Although that does not take away from the fact that this dude was one of the most entertaining and iconic players to step on an NBA court. And he's also a rare old player that talks positively about the modern game, which is always pretty cool to see. But what did you all think of AI in Detroit? Who would you like to see next on Was He Any Good? Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all later.
Drives it, flips it up, bangs it up with .2 showing on the clock.